Good afternoon. I'm Jim Ray with the Road to the Autry Masters. We're talking about the Masters in the American West, and we are fortunate to be here with legendary glass artist Preston Singletary. Preston, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Preston, this is your first year in the Masters. I've wanted to have you in the show for many years, and I'm glad that we finally got you in the show. Looking very much forward to what you've got this year, and hopefully what you bring to us in future years as well. I'd like to
Mhm.
start off by kind of asking artists, what was their artistic upbringing? How did they learn that they were an artist? How did they develop their skills? Can you share with us a little bit about your artistic background?
Yes, I grew up in Seattle and still live here. I was really into music as a child. From about age 11, I started taking piano lessons, and so music is a big driving force for me. But I fell into glass blowing at age 19. The introduction of a good friend of mine, Dante Marioni, whose father, Paul Marioni, was also kind of an old hippie glass blower. Made a lot of, started blowing glass in the 70s and was involved with Pilchuck Glass School. So, in any case, I started as a production worker. I made Christmas balls and paperweights and all kinds of, simple things in the beginning. But I started going to the Pilchuck Glass School at a couple years later in 1984, and that's where I learned how artists work with glass. And then, of course, Dante is quite an established artist, and I was working alongside him for years and years. And so we had this kind of parallel kind of drive to learn, the techniques of glass making, and we learned Venetian glass techniques, and we worked with an Italian master for off and on for several years. And so at one point, it was 1988, I started to dabble in the Tlingit design work, which I'm known for today. So that was quite you know, a shift in my focus, of course, and I had to learn how to draw all these designs onto the glass and, develop this sandblasting technique. So, that's kind of how I came to do what I do today, and that was so I started about 40 years ago, and been doing it for that long, pretty much full time.
I've been following your work probably for at least 20 years, and the diversity of it, you can see some of that back behind you in the shelves. The diversity of it is astounding. Um, Tell us a little bit about the work that you've developed for us for the Master Show.
Yeah, that the piece that you'll have there is based on a basket form. So a traditional Tlingit designed basket, which a lot of these baskets were really made for the tourist trade. The ones that are still quite, you can find, in antique shops and museums and what have you. A lot of those were produced at the turn of the century, and so lots of different. So I've studied those basket designs through looking at old photographs, and some of them come from like traditional patterning, and then some of them I'm pretty sure they were uh, sort of designs that were adapted to the baskets. So this exchange started to happen, in with travel and trade and what have you, and it was a big industry, to make baskets and sell them. So that's how they were proliferated. But so the piece that I made is like an homage to a basket form, and you can see lots of carving techniques that makes it emulate a woven form. You can see a couple of them
Yeah,
up here.
right. Like the white one, the white round one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we've got one of your boxes in the Autry permanent collection. It's been on
Yes.
display in our Into the West exhibition. I think they might be changing that exhibition up. It's been on display there for some time, and it's a beautiful work as well.
Super. Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
so, tell me a little bit about what inspires you for your new work. Where does your inspiration come from?
Well, I made an exhibition that's currently traveling around the country. It's at the Smithsonian, the National Museum of the American Indian. It's coming down in January, and then it's traveling. So this was a major exhibition that was kind of an immersive experience, and so there was lots of uh, glass elements to kind of illustrate the story of how Raven um, took the daylight or took the sun, and he gave it to the world as a gift, essentially. And so my inspiration comes from a lot of mythology, obviously, and in some cases I like to take it. I like to do abstractions, and so some of the forms that I work on might be, based on a small amulet, like a bear's tooth, but I'll make it, bigger and more
Yeah.
sculptural. So I kind of go in a lot of directions with the work. I'm inspired by modernism, I'm inspired by traditional totem forms, and I'm working with lost wax castings to make smaller totem poles. But the biggest totem pole that I've made is about 8 feet tall, and
Wow.
it weighs about 2,800 pounds.
Is that the
And
largest work that you've done?
yeah, that's the weight wise, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done some large mural forms that are on multiple panels of glass, and then I'll distribute the design across those to make a large screen design. But and then also I'm doing a lot of public art these days, so working with steel and glass constructions, and sometimes they're illuminated from within, and they kind of glow at night. So
Hmm.
um, and developing new technologies of printing on glass to make sort of large prints, like the traditional silkscreen prints, but on a large scale on
Yeah.
glass.
I've seen some of your collaborative work with Tammy Garcia. Tammy is ordinarily in the show. She's taken a year off this year.
Hmm.
What was that like to begin to collaborate with other artists? How's that process work for you?
Well, as a glassmaker, I collaborate. um I mean, it's kind of a collaboration because it's a team-oriented
Yeah.
activity. You need to make more complex forms. You need a bigger team. So, collaborating and working with other people has been something that I've done all along. And so, when I saw Tammy's work, I thought there was a real opportunity to and based on the popularity of her work, I thought it
Hmm.
could kind of like turn a few heads,
It did.
um, and it took a while for me to be able to convince her to do it. But when she finally agreed, to collaborate, it was just as I anticipated. It was first of all, it brought a lot of attention to the medium of glass. Um, and when I collaborate with other people, I'm always looking for a bit of a challenge. So I try to look for artists whose work I admire, or I'm friends with them, and then talk about what the possibilities are. Sometimes of course, maybe they come from no glass background or experience at
Right.
all, and so it's kind of fun to share the process with them.
Yeah.
And so I've become a bit of an ambassador of glass, into the indigenous communities. I've collaborated with Maori from New Zealand, and Australian Aboriginal, Hawaiians, natives from all around the North America. So yeah, it's always something to learn. So like how do we interpret the cultural art for today's world?
Right.
That's the key, and that's where I learn a lot of insight to how people think, and then that's where I get a lot of inspiration.
Yeah, great. So talk to me a little bit about your process. Has your process evolved over the span of your career? What's that all about?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely evolved, from being a glass blower and making decorative objects, the type of uh, you know vases and bowls and that type of thing. And then now I've sort of shifted into working, with this sandblasting or carving technique in, carving through layers of color in the glass to expose the color underneath. So usually it's a opaque or an opal color on the exterior, and then the interior is transparent color. So that contrast gets a nice glow when when it's lit just right.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, as my skills have evolved, the pieces become much more complex. Very sculptural, more intricate, bringing a lot of detail into the pieces, and so then I, like as I mentioned, I'm kind of branching out into doing bronze casting and steel fabrication. Um, so I try to. I mean, the most recent ones are these lost wax castings, which are taken from a wooden form that's carved, and usually that's a bit of a collaboration.
Now,
Um,
are you casting glass in that or casting bronze in that?
the glass as well as bronze.
Oh,
So I do
cool.
bronze versions and glass versions. And to do that, I have to actually go to the Czech Republic. And I work with artists over there to make these pieces because they're really, really skilled in their cold working ability, and they have access to lead crystal, which we don't actually have in the States.
Oh, I did not know
So
that. Yeah.
yeah, they don't make lead crystal here anymore, but they still do over there, and they have a whole family of colors that you can
Hmm.
work with. The Czech cut crystal beads is a well-known um, uh, you know thing throughout history, and so they change. They have to develop colors to change with the fashions
Yeah.
essentially. So therefore, we have access to those lead crystal colors over there.
Yeah. I grew up with cut glass from my grandmother, and
Hmm.
that's really where my initial interest in glass started.
Yeah.
And like I said, we followed your work for 20 years or so, and it's just the range and scope and the growth of it all is really quite amazing. Well,
Thank
Preston,
you.
thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing some of your story. I don't know if it's possible, but I hope that we might see you at the Master Show in February. But thank you so much for joining us here.
All right. Very good. Thank you.